Hello, Professor. My research topic for term report is the impact of COVID-19 on financial performance of Taiwan-listed semiconductor companies. There are 5 chapters for the paper. In Chapter 1, there are 3 sessions. Number 1 is the brief on COVID-19, and number 2 is chip shortage and the causes. And number 3 is the main objectives of this study. More than 2 years after the WHO characterized COVID-19 as a public health emergency of international concern on the 11th March of 2020, COVID-19 continues to be a global threat to human health and lives. As of the 20th April of 2022, more than 504 million confirmed COVID-19 cases and over 6.2 million related deaths had been reported to the WHO. Unfortunately, this is not far from the end of the pandemic, since the variants are expected to come still. According to the OECD, the simple average of GDP growth rate of countries all over the world fell to negative 0.6% in the first quarter of 2020 and negative 10.8% in the second quarter of 2020 compared with the same period in previous year. It's worthwhile to study the impact of such pandemic on firms' financial performance. During the earlier month of the COVID-19, the automobile sales plunged down as low as 8% in Europe, 70% in China, and around 50% in the United States. The declining sales period resulted in an inaccurate forecast of the future needs for semiconductors for automobiles. However, when auto sales has picked up the momentum, there has been a severe global shortage of the semiconductor. Moreover, microchips are in nearly everything that we use today, whether it's smartphone, smartwatches, computer, or washing machine. When there is shortage of chip for automobile, that means there are also shortage for the others. There are many factors that lead to the shortage, especially the growing demand of chips in new markets such as 5G, self-driving vehicles, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things. Additionally, Chinese firms stockpile chips worsen the situation. Compared with Q1 2020, China's IC imports increased by more than one-third in first quarter in 2021. Since Taiwanese semiconductors manufacturer playing an important role in the world supply chain, the objectives of this study are: number 1, to have an overview understanding how is the impact of COVID-19 on Taiwan-listed semiconductor companies' financial performance, and number 2, to suggest potential research direction for future research in this field. For Chapter 2, there are three portions. Section 2.1 to review the importance of Taiwan Semiconductor Company to the world supply chain, and Section 2.2 to have a general overview which gives an outlook regarding the available literature of COVID-19 on business and financial aspects, while Section 2.3 to explain the hypothesis adapted in this article. For nowadays, semiconductors are used in all kinds of products. Furthermore, advanced semiconductors is at the heart of emerging technologies such as quantum computing, remote driving vehicles, and artificial intelligence. Several months ago, Intel, which has dominated the semiconductor industry for the last half century, announced that it will not be able to mass-produce 7-nanometer chips until 2023. However, TSMC is not only already producing 7-nanometer chips but also announced that it would begin manufacturing 3-nanometer chips by 2022. In addition, Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturers hold over 50% of the global market share. Taiwan's role was on display recently when chip shortage hit the auto sector and resulted in diplomatic pleas from Germany and the United States for Taiwan to accelerate production. To gain an initial view of the published literature about the COVID-19, we consult the Web of Science database. In the first step, we just include keywords COVID for the query, and the outcomes reveal 279,000 documents, and there are 82,000 published in 2020 and 150,000 in 2021 and 46,000 until now in 2022. And it shows that COVID-19 is definitely the most popular topic for the year after the year 2020. When we broke down those literature by field of research, here is the top 10 field, and we can see that most of those fields are health or medication related, except for the business economics, the number 8. Based on the query outcome, we also tried to break down those literatures by country and list the top 10 countries on page 11. Obviously, the USA is the leading country in this topic, and almost 30% of the literature comes from USA. However, there are just 2,600 documents from Taiwan and is far behind the top 10. When more detail in those documents came from Taiwan, there are 43 documents in management field and 33 in business field and 24 in business finance field. Unfortunately, none of them focus on the performance of Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturer. It appears from previous investigation that numerous research studies have been conducted to explore the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on different industries from different aspects. However, research studies related to the present study are even more scarce. It's important to emphasize that no attempts was previously made to investigate the financial performance of semiconductor industry in the shadow of COVID-19 pandemic. Accordingly, the present study aims to measure and assess semiconductor companies' financial performance during the pandemic. To do so, we have conducted the investigation and proposed the following hypothesis that the COVID-19 pandemic affect positively the financial performance of Taiwan-listed semiconductor companies. In Chapter 3, there are 5 sections as shown in page 13. Our sample consists of 80 companies in semiconductor industry from Taiwan Stock Exchange Corporation. We download the related information from the TEJ database, and we have gathered the research sample considering the range period from year 2018 until 2021 to examine the pandemic impact on financial performance. Following the prior literature, our dependent variables are well acknowledged the ROE and ROA, that means return on equity and return on asset. And the independent variables are working capital ratio, quick ratio, cash ratio, debt to equity ratio, and financial autonomy rate and size. From our samples, we prepared the summary statistics and noticed that the average ROE and ROA of the sample company has increased from 2018 to 2021. However, the year-on-year of ROE and ROA was reduced in pre-COVID period, but it recovered rapidly during COVID period. In addition, the total assets have increased from year to year. In overall, those sample companies increased about 60% of total assets from 2018 to 2021. Instead, the proportion of shareholders' equity and debt used to finance a company's assets has increased for all study periods. It showed us that those sample companies have adopted higher financial leverage from 44.81% in 2018 all the way to 70.97% in 2021. In supporting the expansion of manufacturing capacity. Surprisingly, that the average receivable turnover has remained quite stable during those study periods. This is the table we present the correlation matrix of all variables for our 4 samples. We will combine that information with the result of regression calculations to be discussed later. Our panel data are modeled through sample regression using the poor ordinary least square method to estimate the impact of various financial ratios. The resulting complex model has the following baseline equation that is company performance equal to financial capital structures plus working capital plus size plus domain dummy, where company performance is measured alternatively by return on equity or return on assets, and capital structures is measured alternatively by equity, debt equity ratio, and financial autonomy rate. And working capital is measured alternatively by quick ratio, cash ratio, net working capital, or receivable turnover. And size is the natural logarithm of total assets. In Chapter 4, we are going to present the result of regression calculation. Firstly, is the result of impact on ROE, and secondly, is the results of the impact on ROA. In this table, we can see that Model 1 estimates the effect of the debt to equity ratio on the ROE of companies. A positive correlation from the correlation matrix and its correlation coefficient is 0.85. When the debt to equity ratio of companies increase by 1 unit, their ROE ratios increase on average by 0.103. The amount of variance in the ROE explained by the debt to equity ratio is R squared equal to 0.127. The more companies finance their activity throughout debt, the more is their performance with respect to return on shareholders' equity. For Model 2 adds the net working capital independent variable with a positive effect on ROE. For each additional unit of net working capital, ROE increases on average by 0.141. For Model 3 adds the size proxy for the formation of equation with a direct relationship to company performance, and as the estimated coefficient of size is positive and significant. This table deals with the estimation of ROA through equation 1. Model 6 estimates the effect of financial autonomy rate on the ROA of our sample companies. A negative correlation is seen as negative 0.7, and this rate is the one with the highest explanatory power. When the financial autonomy rate of company increased by 1 unit, their ROA ratios are lower, on average by 0.0747 units. Thus, the more companies finance their activity throughout shareholders' equity, the less their performance on assets as measured by ROA. And for Model 7, as the net working capital independent variable with a positive effect on ROA, and for Model 8 as the size proxy with a positive effect on company performance. In Chapter 5, we want to conclude the research result, contribution, limitation, and suggestions. Our, our results reveal that equity financing, proper liquidity management, and an increased company size consolidate the economic performance of an entity regarding return on equity and return on assets. Our findings are useful for various policymakers such as managers and investors in semiconductor industry in making the best decision for their managing and investing activities. Moreover, governments need to know how Taiwan semiconductor companies respond to the pandemic since those Taiwanese semiconductor companies are so highly connected to the world supply chain. The present study has some limitation regarding the short period of analysis due to the COVID-19 is still there with us. In future study, we intend to extend our data as soon as more financial statements are available to complete the whole COVID-19 period. However, to substantiate our findings, different regression could be conducted separately. Another future research direction could use a dynamic panel approach or cluster analysis might also prove useful. That's all for the presentation. Thank you.